My ex-husband taught our 11-year-old forgery, money laundering, and client recruitment while refusing to pay support for 2 years and filing false CPS reports against me. So I united with every mother. He'd scammed and orchestrated the ultimate takedown. I always thought my 11-year-old son Marcus was my little angel. Sweet, quiet, always did his homework without being asked. But that bubble burst spectacularly last Tuesday. It started when Mrs. Green from down the street knocked on my door, holding a box of Girl Scout cookies. "Oh, how thoughtful of Marcus to support Lily's troop," she beamed. 20 boxes is quite the order. 20 boxes? I hadn't given Marcus money for Girl Scout cookies. My confusion must have shown because Mrs. Green's smile faltered. He did pay for them, right? He said you gave him your credit card. My blood ran cold. I apologized profusely, paid for the cookies, and marched straight to Marcus's room. That's when I discovered his business empire. Under his bed was a lockbox. Where did he even get a lockbox? Containing $347 in small bills, a ledger detailing his transactions, and business cards, actual printed business cards, reading Marcus Mitchell, problem solver. The ledger was eye-opening. Apparently, my entrepreneurial son had been running a homework completion service for half his grade. Math worksheets, $5. Book reports, $10. Science projects, $20. Materials not included. He even had a loyalty program. Every 5th assignment was half price. But that wasn't the worst part. Page 2 revealed his side ventures. Selling his lunch to kids whose parents packed healthy food, and then using the money he made to buy pizza. A password sharing ring for various streaming services. How he got access to 5 different Netflix accounts, I'll never know. Professional excuse notes for PE class, complete with forged parent signatures. As far as the Girl Scout cookies, he'd been buying them in bulk and reselling individual boxes at school for double the price. When confronted, Marcus didn't even look guilty. He adjusted his glasses, when did he start doing that, and said, "Mom, I provide valuable services to my peers. It's called the free market." The free market? Where did my baby learn about the free market? YouTube University, he replied, as if reading my mind. "Did you know that if I invest this money in index funds with a 7% annual return, I'll have over $50,000 by the time I graduate high school?" I stood there, speechless, as my 11-year-old explained compound interest to me. The next morning, I made him return all the money, what we could track down anyway, and write apology letters to everyone involved. He actually negotiated, to keep 10% as a consulting fee for teaching his classmates better study habits. I said no. He countered with 5% to donate to the school library. I said no again. He suggested we compromise. He'd shut down all operations but could keep the lockbox for his legitimate allowance savings. And maybe, just maybe, I'd consider letting him start a lawn mowing business over the summer with proper adult supervision and actual labor involved. I thought that was that. Until 1 week later, I was putting away laundry when I found another notebook hidden behind his dresser. This one was different. No business ledgers or client lists. Just page after page of my son's careful handwriting. Day 43, Mom worked another double shift, made mac and cheese for dinner. Day 51, Mom fell asleep during movie night again. She looks tired. Day 67, heard Mom on the phone with Grandma about the bills. My heart sank as I kept reading. Then I found the goal, circled in red at the bottom of a page. 500 by December. Mom's Christmas present, the good winter coat from Macy's. I sat on his bed, notebook trembling in my hands. All this time I thought my baby was losing his innocence, turning into some money-hungry little schemer. But he'd noticed. He'd noticed my coat was held together with safety pins. He'd noticed I never bought anything for myself. He'd noticed, and he'd tried to fix it the only way an 11-year-old knew how. That's when I saw it. A business card that fell out of the notebook. Not one of Marcus's homemade ones. A real professional card. Derek Mitchell, financial advisor. My ex-husband's card. The same ex who hadn't paid child support in 2 years. The same ex who told Marcus he couldn't visit this summer because of work stuff. On the back, in Derek's handwriting, "Proud of you, son. Keep up the good work. Remember, don't tell Mom about our talks." My hands shook as I stared at Derek's business card. The bastard had been coaching our son behind my back, turning him into a miniature version of himself while I worked myself to exhaustion trying to keep us afloat. I grabbed my phone and took a picture of the card and his handwritten note, evidence. Then I typed out a text to Derek with trembling fingers. The message was simple but direct, demanding an immediate conversation about Marcus. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Marcus was downstairs, the sounds of his video game drifting up through the floor. He had no idea I'd found his second notebook. No clue that his secret was out. Part of me wanted to protect that innocence, but the larger part burned with fury at Derek's manipulation. My phone buzzed. Derek's response came within seconds, claiming ignorance and being too busy with clients. I screenshot the message immediately. The timestamp proved he'd been waiting by his phone, ready to respond instantly despite claiming to be occupied. My jaw clenched as I dialed his number. He answered on the first ring, confirming my suspicion that he'd been expecting my call. I didn't bother with pleasantries, cutting straight to the accusation about coaching our son to break the law. His laugh made my skin crawl. I gripped the phone tighter as he casually admitted to teaching Marcus about entrepreneurship, claiming it wasn't illegal. The way he said my name, Sarah, with that condescending tone he'd perfected during our marriage, made my stomach turn. But I had him. He'd admitted involvement. My phone pinged with another text. Tommy's mother was asking if Marcus still offered homework help because her son needed math assistance. The business network was wider than I'd thought. How many kids were involved? How deep did this go? I stood in Marcus's room weighing my options. Confront him immediately or gather more information first. The mother in me wanted answers now, but the woman who'd survived Derek's manipulation knew better. Information was power. I needed to know exactly what I was dealing with. Marcus's tablet sat on his desk, still warm from recent use. I picked it up, my heart pounding as I navigated to his email. What I found made my blood run cold. Weekly business reports sent to Derek, complete with profit projections and customer acquisition strategies. My 11-year-old was writing business reports. The emails went back 6 months, longer than I'd imagined. I noticed files being deleted from his cloud storage in real time. The folder was labeled Dad's Lessons. My fingers flew across the screen, managing to screenshot several file names before they vanished completely. Investment strategies for beginners, client retention methods, legal loopholes 101. The bedroom door creaked. Marcus stood in the doorway, his eyes wide behind his glasses. He asked why I was in his room, and my fumbled explanation about putting away laundry fooled neither of us. His gaze darted to the notebook on his bed, then back to me. He knew. Within an hour, I saw a text notification pop up on Marcus's tablet from Derek. Code Red Protocol. Remember what we discussed? My son had emergency protocols with his father. What kind of twisted game were they playing? My phone rang. Janet, my sister, sounded confused as she explained that Marcus had just called asking if he could store some boxes at her house. The web was expanding, and Derek was clearly trying to hide evidence. I searched Marcus's backpack while he was in the bathroom. Tucked in a hidden pocket were printed emails between him and Derek, dating back 6 months. They discussed investment strategies, market analysis, and client management. The dates hit me like a punch to the gut. These conversations started before our divorce was even finalized. While I was fighting for child support, Derek was grooming our our son for illegal business ventures. My email chimed. Ms. Rodriguez, Marcus's teacher, expressed concern about his recent behavior. He'd been approaching classmates during lunch, asking if their parents needed financial advisors. My son was prospecting clients at elementary school. The next morning at school pickup, my friend Beth caught me off guard. She mentioned how helpful Derek had been with her investment portfolio, adding that Marcus had recommended him. My son had been funneling clients to his father. I managed to keep my expression neutral, but inside I was reeling. I scrolled through old texts from Marcus while sitting in the parking lot. One jumped out at me. Sent the same week Derek stopped paying child support. Dad says I'm naturally gifted at business. The timing wasn't a coincidence. Derek had weaponized our son's love and trust. My phone buzzed with an email notification. Derek had contacted the school counselor, copying me, expressing concern about my reaction to Marcus's academic achievements. He suggested I might need intervention. The gaslighting had begun. At work, my boss pulled me aside. Someone had filed an anonymous complaint about me leaving early for personal issues. Security footage later revealed Derek's BMW in our parking lot that day. He was escalating. I scheduled a meeting with the principal, hoping to address my concerns about Derek's influence. Instead, I hit a wall. Mr. Mitchell had been a generous donor to their STEM program. The donation date? 3 weeks after he'd stopped paying child support. He'd bought influence with money that should have been supporting his son. That evening, I created a fake email account and contacted Derek as a potential client interested in financial planning. During our video consultation, his computer screen briefly showed a folder labeled Marcus Future Partner, containing financial projections through 2035. He wasn't just using our son, he was grooming him for a long-term partnership. 3 different school parents mentioned their kids talking about Marcus's investment club starting next semester. Derek was planning to expand the operation. The pattern became clear as I documented each conversation. Derek was targeting single mothers through Marcus, building his client base while avoiding his legal obligations. My phone rang at 10 p.m. Emma, Derek's assistant, spoke quickly and quietly. She'd quit that day and needed to tell me what Derek was planning for Marcus. Her voice shook as she explained what she'd witnessed over the past months. Emma introduced me to 2 other divorced mothers the next day. We met at a coffee shop, and their stories made my stomach turn. Similar patterns, similar manipulation, similar use of their children. This wasn't Derek's first attempt at this scheme. Before I could process everything, I received notice that Derek had filed an emergency motion for increased visitation. He cited my interference with father-son bonding as the reason. The man who hadn't paid child support in 2 years suddenly wanted more time with Marcus. Ms. Rodriguez called again that afternoon. Marcus had been caught during lunch trying to recruit kindergartners for a candy investment fund. He'd created a pyramid scheme for 5-year-olds. My sweet boy was becoming everything I tried to protect him from. I sat at my kitchen table that night, surrounded by evidence, screenshots, emails, witness statements, and documentation of Derek's schemes. The notebook with Marcus's careful tracking of my struggles lay open beside me. Somewhere between his pure intention to help his tired mother and Derek's manipulation, my son had lost his way. But I wouldn't let Derek win. I wouldn't let him turn our son into a weapon against me or a tool for his own gain. The battle lines were drawn, and I was ready to fight. Not with anger or emotion, but with the methodical determination of a mother protecting her child. The evidence was mounting. The allies were gathering, and Derek had no idea that his carefully constructed plan was about to crumble. He'd taught Marcus about business, but he'd forgotten the most important lesson. Never underestimate a mother's love. The following Saturday morning arrived with Derek's BMW pulling into my driveway unannounced. Marcus was at soccer practice, and I watched through the kitchen window as Derek emerged carrying an expensive gift bag and a new uniform. My stomach twisted as I realized his next move. I arrived at the field 20 minutes later to find Derek center stage, presenting Marcus with top-of-the-line cleats while loudly explaining to other parents how he wanted to ensure his son had proper equipment since I couldn't afford it. The public humiliation burned, but I recognized the pattern from our marriage. Generosity as a weapon, kindness as manipulation. Marcus looked uncomfortable as Derek made a show of helping him try on the cleats. Other parents watched with mixed expressions, some sympathetic, others clearly buying into Derek's performance. I stood at the edge of the field, documenting everything with my phone while maintaining composure. After practice, I collected Marcus and the expensive gifts without acknowledging Derek's smirk. In the car, Marcus fidgeted with the shoebox, his face troubled. He finally admitted that his father had promised more gifts if he'd talk about how hard things were at home. The manipulation was escalating beyond financial schemes into emotional warfare. That evening, Janet called with disturbing news. Derek had approached her about paying her daughter's college tuition, but with conditions. If I ever became unstable and Marcus needed somewhere to stay, she'd provide a home. He was laying groundwork for a custody battle while buying family loyalty. Janet's voice shook as she explained how she'd thrown him out of her house. I spent Sunday organizing evidence while Marcus did homework. Beth texted, panicked. She discovered Derek had used their investment meetings to access her divorce settlement information. His questions about her financial situation hadn't been professional interest. He'd been gathering intelligence on vulnerable single mothers. She was pulling all her money out immediately. Emma sent a text that evening with Derek's office disposal schedule. She'd memorized it during her employment, knowing it might be useful. I drove to his office building at dawn, finding his recycling bin at the curb. Inside were printed lesson plans for Marcus, detailed strategies for expanding the children's business network, and projections for recruiting more elementary school clients. I photographed every page before the garbage truck arrived, my hands steady despite my racing heart. The documents revealed Derek's systematic approach to grooming not just Marcus, but multiple children of divorced mothers. Each plan included psychological profiles of the mothers, noting their vulnerabilities and financial situations. My attempt to file a police report that afternoon met with frustration. The officer listened politely but explained that teaching children about business wasn't illegal. Without evidence of actual crimes, they couldn't act. I left the station feeling defeated but not surprised. Derek had always operated in legal gray areas. The 3 mothers Emma had connected me with became unexpected allies. We formed a support group, meeting weekly to share documentation and compare Derek's tactics. The similarities were chilling. Identical phrases used on our sons, similar timing with support payment cessation, and the same pattern of public generosity masking private manipulation. Emma provided our group with something invaluable during our 3rd meeting. She'd made copies of Derek's instructions to create false billing records and hide assets before quitting. She'd protected herself by documenting everything, sensing that Derek's schemes would eventually implode. Her foresight gave us concrete evidence of financial fraud. An unexpected message arrived through social media. Derek's college ex-girlfriend had found our support group online. She'd watched him do the same thing with her nephew 20 years ago, and had kept the letters documenting his manipulation. The pattern stretched back decades, a long trail of damaged relationships and exploited children. I shifted tactics, choosing calm documentation over emotional confrontation. Other parents began noticing the difference between Derek's dramatic claims and my methodical response. When he'd make accusations at school events, I'd simply present facts, dates, amounts, documented incidents. Credibility slowly shifted in my favor favor. The Christmas coat deadline loomed, making Marcus increasingly anxious about his confiscated money. He'd pace his room, calculating how many lawns he'd need to mow to earn $500 before December. The pressure Derek had created was crushing our son's childhood, replacing it with adult anxieties about money and responsibility. One evening, Marcus broke down completely. Through tears, he explained that Derek had promised if he made enough money, I wouldn't have to work double shifts anymore. The manipulation of his pure desire to help me made my chest ache. Derek had weaponized our son's love, turning it into a tool for his own agenda. At bedtime, Marcus asked a question that showed he was beginning to see through the manipulation. He wondered why his father didn't just give me money directly instead of teaching him to earn it. The innocent logic of a child was cutting through Derek's elaborate schemes. I held him close, promising we'd figure everything out together. Derek's next move was predictable, but still painful. He offered to pay Marcus's full college tuition if I dropped my opposition to his mentorship program. The bribe came through his lawyer, making it official. I refused immediately, knowing that accepting would mean sacrificing Marcus's emotional well-being for financial security. Janet and Beth began independently noticing inconsistencies in Derek's stories about me. His claims of my instability didn't match the mother they knew. When he'd approach them at school events with concerns about my mental state, they'd compare notes afterward. His narrative was crumbling as more people communicated. The discovery that shook me most came while searching for Marcus's winter clothes. Derek had listed our son as a junior partner on loan applications, using his social security number for business purposes. The fraud went beyond manipulation into identity theft. My 11-year-old's credit was already being compromised. Derek's newest clients still believed his version of events, but established ones started questioning his stories. The more he pushed his narrative of me as an unstable ex-wife, the more people wondered why he wasn't paying support if he was so concerned. His professional reputation began showing cracks. Emma agreed to meet with my lawyer, providing a sworn affidavit about witnessing Derek teach Marcus forgery techniques. She described specific incidents with dates, times, and details. Her testimony transformed our case from circumstantial to concrete. She'd seen Derek showing Marcus how to replicate signatures, explaining it as a useful business skill. The mediation session arrived with Derek promising Marcus rewards for sitting with him. Instead, Marcus chose to sit beside me, his small hand gripping mine under the table. Derek's face darkened as his son's loyalty became clear. The mediator noted Marcus's choice, adding it to the official record. I made a conscious decision that surprised my lawyer. Despite having evidence of Marcus's forged signatures on excuse notes, I refused to use them against Derek. I wouldn't weaponize our son the way Derek had. The lawyer nodded, understanding that maintaining moral high ground mattered more than winning at any cost. The school's winter fundraiser became an unexpected confrontation. Derek loudly expressed concern about my jealousy of his bond with Marcus. Instead of reacting emotionally, I calmly presented a timeline of his support non-payment to the parents who'd gathered. The crowd's perception shifted as they realized the truth behind his performance. Hidden in Marcus's closet, I found 3 bank statements in his name that Derek had given him for his files. The accounts showed suspicious activity, deposits and withdrawals that didn't match any legitimate business for an 11-year-old. More evidence of Derek using our son's identity for financial manipulation. Derek's biggest client pulled their entire portfolio after learning about Marcus's involvement in the business schemes. Word spread through the professional community. The man who'd built his reputation on family values and financial wisdom was being exposed as someone who exploited his own child. Other divorced fathers at school began distancing themselves from Derek at events. Men who'd initially sympathized with him about dealing with difficult ex-wives started seeing the pattern. His social isolation grew as more people recognized his manipulation tactics. My coworkers rallied around me, offering to testify about my dedication despite Derek's harassment campaign. They'd witnessed the anonymous complaints, the parking lot surveillance, and my determination to maintain professionalism. Their support strengthened my position against Derek's claims of instability. The confrontation I'd been avoiding finally happened when Marcus directly asked Derek why he lied about me. The question came during a supervised visitation, with the social worker documenting Derek's response. His fumbled explanation about protecting Marcus from my jealousy fell flat against his son's growing awareness. School parents began approaching me with apologies for believing Derek's version of events. The community support I'd lost was slowly returning as people compared notes and recognized patterns. His charm offensive was losing effectiveness against mounting evidence of his true character. Derek's options narrowed as his contradictions became impossible to ignore. Different people had been told different stories about why he wasn't paying support, why he needed Marcus's help with the business, and why I was supposedly unstable. The web of lies was tangling around him. A phone call from Derek's college ex-girlfriend's nephew provided the most chilling perspective. Now an adult, he described how Derek's manipulation had destroyed his relationship with his mother for years. He urged me not to let the pattern repeat with Marcus. His story spanned decades, showing Derek's consistent method of operation. I focused on helping Marcus maintain normal friendships despite the business scandal. Arranging apology playdates where he could explain and make amends helped preserve his social connections. The other children forgave easily, more interested in playing than holding grudges about homework schemes. 6 families volunteered to testify about Derek's manipulation tactics at our custody hearing. Parents who'd witnessed his public performances, mothers he'd targeted for financial advice, and fathers who'd seen through his act all offered support. The community Derek had tried to turn against me was now standing with me. Derek's attempt to bribe Marcus with a Disney trip backfired spectacularly. Marcus told him he just wanted him to pay what he owed me. The simple honesty of a child wanting fairness over rewards left Derek speechless. The supervised visitation report noted his inability to respond to his son's direct request. The church treasurer noticed Derek's pattern of bounced tithing checks while he drove a new BMW. His public facade of success and generosity was cracking as financial reality emerged. The congregation that had seen him as a successful family man began questioning his priorities. The school board voted to remove Derek from the donor wall after learning about his support non-payment. His attempt to buy influence with money that should have supported Marcus backfired as the administration recognized the ethical conflict. His name came down quietly, but the message was clear. My divorce lawyer brought in a financial forensics expert who uncovered Derek's hidden assets using public records. Working on contingency for the back support, she was motivated to dig deep. The expert's report revealed offshore accounts, shell companies, and systematic hiding of wealth while claiming inability to pay support. My annual work review arrived at the worst possible time, forcing me to formally address Derek's harassment with HR. The investigation into the parking lot incidents and anonymous complaints created an official record of his stalking behavior. My employer's support strengthened my legal position significantly. Marcus's basketball team parents witnessed Derek berating him for choosing the wrong side. The public display of anger toward an 11-year-old shocked even those who'd initially believed Derek's version of events. Several parents reported the incident to the coach, creating more documentation of his inappropriate behavior. The realization that I needed to protect Marcus's future credit and identity prompted immediate action. information. I placed fraud alerts on his social security number and began the process of cleaning up the damage Derek had done. Every step required documentation, adding to our growing case file. My approach of methodically building a paper trail instead of emotional confrontation earned my lawyer's respect. She commented that it was the best documented case she'd seen. Every claim had supporting evidence, every incident had witnesses, and every manipulation had a paper trail. Even Derek's mother began questioning his behavior. She called asking why he wouldn't just pay what he owed me. Her disappointment in her son was evident as she described his excuses becoming increasingly elaborate. Family support was shifting away from Derek as truth emerged. Emma's testimony combined with other mothers' experiences created an undeniable pattern of Derek's predatory behavior. He specifically targeted single mothers, used their children to gain access, and exploited their financial vulnerabilities. The systematic nature of his approach showed clear intent to defraud. My lawyer filed an emergency motion including Marcus's recording of Derek's bribery attempt. The hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks out, but the evidence was compelling enough to warrant expedited consideration. The legal system was finally responding to the documented pattern of abuse. Derek's final manipulation attempt involved promising Marcus a trust fund if he testified against me. The desperation in his offer showed how cornered he felt. His assumption that an 11-year-old could be bought revealed his fundamental misunderstanding of his son's character. Marcus used the tablet I'd given him to record the conversation, immediately sending it to me. His quick thinking and loyalty brought tears to my eyes. Despite months of manipulation and grooming, our son's moral compass remained intact. He'd learned to document evidence just like his mother. Derek's largest client filed a lawsuit for investment losses, triggering a professional investigation into his practices. The natural consequences of his behavior were arriving without my intervention. His focus on manipulating Marcus had distracted him from maintaining his legitimate business, leading to poor decisions and client losses. The support group mothers had become genuine friends, with our children forming their own friendships through regular playdates. What began as shared trauma evolved into a real community. We supported each other through court dates, shared resources, and created a network Derek could never infiltrate. A school parent who worked as an attorney offered pro bono help after learning about Derek's schemes affecting multiple families. The legal community was rallying around our cause, recognizing the broader implications of allowing such manipulation to continue unchecked. Professional resources were aligning in our favor. Emma's testimony about Derek instructing her to create false documentation landed with devastating impact in the courtroom. The judge's expression hardened as bank statements proved Derek had substantial funds throughout his 2-year support non-payment period. Each piece of evidence built an undeniable case of willful violation. I submitted our complete evidence package to the court clerk. 6 months of meticulously documented financial fraud, identity theft, and child manipulation. Every text message, email, and witness statement had been organized chronologically. The weight of truth pressed against Derek's fabricated narrative. The school board's emergency meeting resulted in Derek being banned from all campus events. Parent after parent testified about witnessing his inappropriate behavior toward Marcus and his manipulation tactics. The vote was unanimous. Security would escort him off property if he appeared. Derek's desperation peaked when he filed a false CPS report claiming my work schedule constituted neglect. The investigator arrived at our door, apologetic, but required to follow protocol. I provided documentation of childcare arrangements, Marcus's excellent grades, and testimonies from neighbors about our stable home environment. Marcus stayed with Janet during the investigation, confused and scared by the sudden upheaval. I visited him daily, maintaining normalcy while navigating the legal assault. Janet documented everything, creating another paper trail of Derek's weaponization of the system. Some school parents began questioning whether I'd pushed too hard against Derek. Their whispered conversations at pickup suggested sympathy for a father just trying to connect with his son. The wavering support stung, but I understood how Derek's charm could still influence those who hadn't seen the full picture. My legal defense costs mounted while I juggled work responsibilities and custody proceedings. The financial strain Derek had created through his schemes now threatened to break me. Sleep became a luxury as I prepared documentation each night after Marcus went to bed. The emergency custody hearing finally arrived. I presented recordings, documentation, and witness affidavits while Derek claimed parental alienation. His lawyer painted me as vindictive, using our son as a pawn. The irony of his accusations wasn't lost on anyone who'd reviewed the evidence. Derek picked up Marcus from his friend's house during his court-allowed hours. When he didn't return him on time, claiming car trouble, I knew another manipulation was underway. Police couldn't act immediately since he had visitation rights. 3 hours passed before we located them at Derek's office. I arrived with police and school officials to find Derek teaching Marcus about courage and standing up to persecution. Marcus sat rigid in an office chair, his face pale with stress. The moment he saw me, tears started flowing. His father's attempts to coach him had clearly failed. Derek's outburst about me ruining their bond rang hollow when Marcus responded with painful honesty about the lies. The officers documented Derek's admission that he'd been using Marcus's schemes to recruit clients, boasting about his son's natural talent. His inability to recognize the harm he'd caused was breathtaking. Emma arrived with additional documentation, while my lawyer presented affidavits from Derek's ex-girlfriend and her nephew. Their written testimonies revealed decades of similar manipulation patterns. The paper trail spoke volumes about Derek's systematic approach to exploiting children and their mothers. The prosecutor offered Derek a plea deal, full restitution plus probation if he admitted to the financial crimes. I faced a choice between accepting this resolution or pursuing maximum charges. The decision weighed heavily, knowing a trial would mean more trauma for Marcus, but potentially stronger consequences for Derek. I chose to pursue both maximum financial damages and criminal fraud charges. The longer battle ahead would be costly and exhausting, but Derek needed to face real consequences. Marcus deserved justice, not just a slap on his father's wrist. The State Financial Regulatory Board opened an investigation based on client complaints flooding in after news of Derek's schemes spread. His ability to take new clients was frozen pending the investigation's outcome. Professional consequences were mounting alongside legal ones. Derek's attempt to flee with hidden assets failed when authorities froze his accounts. The forensic accountant had traced money through shell companies to offshore holdings. Every escape route Derek had carefully constructed was being systematically blocked. His final manipulation attempt, claiming a mental health crisis to avoid consequences, crumbled when prosecutors presented recorded threats he'd made. The calculated nature of his actions over months contradicted any claims of temporary instability. His patterns showed deliberate, long-term planning. The family court judge's ruling was comprehensive. I won full custody with Derek receiving only supervised visitation pending completion of parenting classes and therapy. Back support plus interest was ordered, along with damages for identity theft and fraud using Marcus's information. Derek accepted the criminal plea deal when faced with mounting evidence. His sentence included probation, full restitution, and a financial fraud conviction that effectively ended his career as a financial advisor. The man who'd built his identity on financial expertise would never legally practice practice again. Marcus's credit was painstakingly restored through months of documentation and disputes. The college fund established from seized assets would give him opportunities Derek had tried to steal through his schemes. Every fraudulent account was closed, every mark on his credit removed. 6 months after the court battles ended, life had found a new rhythm. Marcus mowed lawns legitimately for neighbors, earning money through actual work. I'd returned to normal hours, no longer needing doubles to compensate for missing support. The exhaustion that had defined our lives was lifting. The support group of mothers continued meeting monthly, now focused on healing rather than evidence gathering. Our children played together while we shared resources about protecting them from manipulation. What Derek had intended to divide had instead created an unbreakable community. Marcus started therapy to process the manipulation he'd endured. His therapist specialized in children who'd been used in parental conflicts. Slowly, he began understanding that his father's love had been conditional and manipulative, while learning to trust his own instincts again. The school implemented new policies about parent volunteers and donations, closing loopholes Derek had exploited. His legacy became stronger protections for vulnerable families. Other schools in the district adopted similar measures after learning about our case. Christmas morning arrived with simple gifts and genuine joy. Marcus gave me a handmade coupon book for chores. No money involved, just promises to help around the house. I wore a new coat I'd bought myself with my own money. The safety pins finally retired. Derek served his weekends in jail as part of his sentence. His designer suits replaced with county uniforms. His mother visited me once to apologize for not seeing the truth sooner. She established a small trust for Marcus, wanting to provide what her son had withheld. Marcus began tutoring struggling students at the library for free, redirecting his business skills toward helping others. His natural ability to explain complex concepts now served a positive purpose. The homework empire had transformed into genuine academic support. The other mothers from our support group successfully pursued their own cases against Derek, recovering money he'd taken through fraudulent investment advice. His scheme's full scope emerged as more victims came forward. Justice was slow but thorough. 1 year after discovering Derek's business card in Marcus's notebook, I spoke at a single mother's support group about recognizing financial manipulation. My story helped others identify similar patterns in their own lives. Knowledge became power for vulnerable families. Marcus sat in the library's tutoring center, patiently explaining fractions to a younger student. His glasses still slipped down his nose when he concentrated, but his focus had shifted from profit to genuine help. The boy who'd once run illegal businesses now found satisfaction in others' success. Derek's weekend jail sentences continued as he worked through his restitution payments. His fall from successful financial advisor to convicted fraud was complete. The cycle of exploitation he'd perpetuated for decades had finally broken against one mother's determination to protect her son. The integrity Marcus learned through our ordeal proved more valuable than any business lesson Derek had taught. Real success wasn't measured in profit margins or clever schemes. It was found in honest work, genuine relationships, and the courage to stand against manipulation, even when it came from someone who should have protected you. Our story became a cautionary tale in our community about the dangers of parental manipulation and financial exploitation, not through media attention or fame, but through quiet conversations between parents, shared warnings at school meetings, and the gradual strengthening of protections for vulnerable families. Derek had taught Marcus about business, but life had taught us both about character.